Zardof listened with attention and at the same time with surprise and amazement to the story that the machine related to the events that occurred in that place. The experiments, the colonization, the creation of these new hybrid creatures and Zardof. The more he listened, the more questions arose ready to ask this artificial mind.
Explain to me how everything was carried out, the experiments, the creatures, how many survived, where are they? I could see some in other places on this planet, but I didn't see the other type. What? The Galaxians forced its creation so much?
Terraforming this planet was not so difficult for the Erkalians and the Galaxians. At that time it had a very stable climate. It was extremely fertile, and the creatures were not a big threat to them. The real problem was how to populate it. As I explained before, the embryos or the few native inhabitants from Erkala could not adapt to the planet. It was due to different factors, the environmental and the new bacteria. Just by uniting with a native organism and adapting, it would be the only way to create a way of life and be able to live here. From that moment on, the mission became how to make a new being, using its genetics, but using the native adaptation that these beings already had on this planet. That is, creating a new life to be able to live. The only thing was that Galax was always in control of all the experiments. The experiments began. Galax was in charge using technology and scientists to develop the idea. They focused on the molecular and genetic structure of the beings. The purpose was to modify it, mix it, and adapt it to that of the Uricalians. Something that was not easy because the differences were enormous. The experiments were complicated, difficult. They were based on a primate that was physiologically compatible with the physiology of the Erkalians. And they proceeded. The factors that were against were countless. Only the most advanced technologies could complete these challenges. This was the reason why Galax took advantage of the manufacturing of these beings. Their technology was very advanced, and you should know this as an Armakian, that much of this technology was given by Armark to Galax millennia ago. Several prototypes were made, but the results were always very inferior. On occasions they were aberrant. His ability to learn and memorize was very bad. His mobility was good but limited. And the worst thing was his violent and primitive temperament, which was difficult to control. On multiple occasions, they attacked each other, or their creators, or did not respond to orders, or simply let themselves be carried away by the primitive animal instinct, and became beasts that consequently had to be eliminated and started again. The struggle to obtain that being that they were looking for took a long time, until they finally found an intelligent being that could control the primitive instinct. Something that was not achieved 100%, but it could achieve the objectives of its creators. When they had finally obtained the prototype that they had sought so much, time had passed and very few inhabitants of Erkala were left alive, since their body had been repaired so many times that they could no longer simply continue living like this, and the only hope they had was that their genes and their race would continue living in that new hybrid that they had been able to achieve on this new planet. Having already obtained an ideal prototype, they spent a lot of time studying it, analyzing each cell completely, its brain, its metabolism, because they should be 100% sure that this individual would be the basis for being able to manufacture more. One of the things that they should do later is that it would be able to reproduce rapidly among itself. Although for that they would have to manufacture a female genetically identical to it. After all the studies and tests were concluded, they proceeded to manufacture more individuals, to do experiments on how they would adapt to living in an outside environment, to test their intelligence, their power of adaptation to the environment. This would be like programming a computer that is totally blank. They had to implant all the information that they could use. They also realized that they could alter their brain, their intelligence, their useful life, their resistance to diseases, their ability to reason, absolutely everything. The Erkalians were very pleased with the results because now they could live, although in another physical form. Their new descendants could have a healthy new planet to live again. But the Galaxians had other plans. These plans consisted of controlling these new individuals for other purposes that would be very beneficial to them but not to the Ercalians. The next step was the terraforming of the planet. For that, they would need a lot of energy. Using the technology they had available, it would not be so difficult. Using their high technology combined with natural elements that this plant had available, it began the construction of enormous structures that would serve as atomic reactors, energy generators, powerful communication systems, the adaptation of the lands for future food production. Much of the natural life of this planet was exterminated because the creatures were extremely hostile and would make the task very difficult if they had not been removed from the way. The next phase consisted of using the created individuals to form societies. By this time, the females of this new species had already been created. They were taught to make settlements. They were taught the construction of buildings, how to domesticate animals, how to plant the land. These were only basic teachings because their brains were analyzed, and their capacity was measured. Then later, according to their evolution, they would receive more advanced knowledge. The Galaioxians had the technology to convert these new beings from simple semi-wild beings to ultra-powerful beings with just a little manipulation in their system. The next step was to begin to build more developed, more efficient cities. By this time, individuals were already better prepared. They could handle large machines themselves. They could operate computer systems. They could even pilot ships and transport enormous weights, or on occasions manipulate inert matter. By the time all the tests and exams had been completed, the Ercalians had become extinct in their entirety, dying only with the promise from the Galaioxians that their race would live in peace, now in this new manufactured individual. But the Galaioxians were very far from fulfilling this wish. For them, these individuals were something that could be used for future plans. Meanwhile, the individuals continued their development under the surveillance of the Galaioxians. The individuals considered the Galaioxian as their creators, as their parents, as their gods, since they did not know anything else except them. Because the Galaioxians had made sure that they forgot their Eurocalian origin. By this period, individuals also mastered a writing system and a simple language developed by the Galaioxians to be able to communicate with each other. They were capable of being in charge of complex projects. They could handle complicated machines. They could pilot ships, operate computers. Even their reproduction was carried out by them, since the integration with their female relatives had been a success. Over time, the Galaioxians began to put some of them in positions of power and command, and receive better privileges. They were taught to control their own relatives, and those were taught to obey them. But one thing was very clear. The Galaioxians never allowed individuals to treat them as equals. They always made sure that they were seen as very superior beings.
The voice of the machine paused, and Zarduf, who had listened attentively to the story, proceeded to question the machine again.
What you just told me is something incredible. I was never aware that something like this had been done in this remote sector of the galaxy. But what happened next? If he had practically terraformed this planet completely, what happened? Where are those individuals? The primitive beings that I could see in another sector of this planet when I explored it do not look like the ones you describe in the story. What happened to the structures? What happened to the buildings? What happened to the Galaioxians? What happened to the planet? Why do you have this cold weather now?
The reason for the project's abandonment on this planet came from the planet itself. As you may already know, this planet is very old, and although it is very fertile and can host a great variety of life, its accretion is unstable. It is also a watery planet. There is too much water, both on its surface and inside. It may even hold more water inside itself than on its surface. One day, the sensors that were placed in the different areas where there were large structures detected abnormal vibrations deep inside the planet. When they studied them, they realized that the planet was about to flood. It was a gigantic ocean inside the planet, and it was going to tear the planet apart. In order to release all the water that had been there for millions of cycles, and there was no time to do anything, the Galaioxians prepared to withdraw from this planet. However, they continued to be in close contact with Galax, and the decision was made to simply abandon it. They knew that it would eventually stabilize. There were not enough ships to carry the individuals, and they could not survive on Galax. The Galaioxians gathered a small elite that they had formed among the individuals and gave them instructions to save themselves and the people they selected, including animals. They gave them equipment and whatever they needed to build ships to be able to face the brutal flood that was coming. The individuals decided to save those prototypes that I think you saw in your exploration in their ships, because even though the Galaioxians discarded them, the individuals saved some of them because they were never hostile to them, and they knew that they were their predecessors and they helped them with difficult tasks for them. When the fateful moment arrived, the Galaioxians took off in their ships, leaving behind their creations as well as the structures. The most sensitive and dangerous equipment was taken with them. It was the only thing they took with them. While this was happening, the planet was torn apart from within. Giant quantities of water rose to the clouds with meteoric force, causing enormous jets of water to rain down from the sky. The entire planet was covered in water. Much of the life that had existed became extinct. Only those individuals created by the Galaioxians remained as bearers of the knowledge that their creators had given them. Meanwhile, the individuals prepared for the worst in the ship they managed to build.
But what happened to the individuals? Where did they go? Why is this weather so cold?
The information that has been stored all this time is what I am telling you. I was one of the few devices that the Galaioxians left here. Maybe because I'm made of quartz. I don't know what happened to the individuals, since this is the first time that it has been activated to function and tell what happened. Only someone like you could do it. They would never have been able to. I can quantify and make conjectures according to the data I have. The most likely thing is that they have established one or several civilizations. The knowledge they had would allow them, but the damage suffered by the planet was so great that it is impossible that they could have continued along the path that their creators marked out for them. They should have been rebuilt from scratch without access to technology. I don't know about that. As for the climate, I had no information that the planet was in a state of freezing. According to the data that I still have left about this planet, its accretion has unstable cycles, just as it has a lot of water inside. There's also a lot on the surface. Water regulates the climate here. A single change in water currents would cause temperatures to drop. And a cataclysm like the one that occurred could have greatly modified the climate of this planet.
Your information has been invaluable to me. Answer one last question. What is the name of the commander who was behind the fabrication of these individuals and the terraforming of this planet?
His name is Commander Barrick of Galax.
Zardoff was taken by surprise by such a revelation. Varric? Was it perhaps the same one that caused the destruction of their planetary system? Zardoff. Now, he had many more questions than before. I should think about what to do now. For this reason, he decided to return his spaceship to consult and plan what he would do next now that he knew these revelations.